All right, why are we here today? I think it's because we love ideas, right? I think that's our common bond. And it's not just the ideas, it's what we can do with the ideas. Whether we can develop ourselves personally or perhaps it's professionally, maybe we can change the city or even the planet. For years, I was the chief curator of TEDxFortWayne, and my most cherished memories were seeing an idea take root in somebody, seeing it blossom and seeing it grow. In 2012, we did Rethink Fort Wayne. This year's theme is resurgence, and that's a fantastic theme. And I think there's a common connection between those themes, is that ideas are no longer static, they keep changing. The pace of change is accelerating. And you don't have to be convinced of that, it's in your news feeds every day. I think change is the only constant. I think we need to rethink normal. I was 5, my normal was about to change, permanently. I had learned to color in the lines, and my pre-K teacher, my mom, had taught me this. Our house was actually white, not red, and we had a great big backyard complete with a sandbox. We lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan, home of the University of Michigan, which is a very accepting community. It's very inclusive, it's culturally diverse, and it's a mini melting pot of some of the smartest minds. And this was our normal. This is my brother and I. This is the fort my dad built behind our house. I'm the one next to the American flag. My dad, William Marvin, well, he was from the South, and he was a charming and handsome redneck from humble means. My mom, she was from a wealthy neighborhood, and she was quite a catch. She was passionate and energetic, and she apparently was not drawn to the typical suitors. They met while working at a camp, and they married soon after, while my mom was still in college. She was going to Taylor University in UPLAND, Indiana. It's a small, private Christian college. And my dad had gone to many colleges throughout Florida. In fact, I heard one of the ways he put himself through school was he would go out on the fishing boats because he loved to fish. And guys would get drunk. Well, he would go fishing, and then he'd play poker with them. And he would often win. And then he would sell them the fish because, well, they were drunk and they didn't want to go home empty-handed. So that's how he started to put himself through school. But being married, he thought, I got to rethink this thing. I got to maybe get him more stable. And so that's eventually what took us to Michigan. The year was 1975, and something drew me down the steps. It was a loud noise, and so I kind of snuck down far enough to see but not be seen. And my mom was yelling at my dad. She was throwing a pillow at him. That was not normal. My dad had become involved with my mom's best friend. She was deeply wounded. I don't really remember a lot about the next few months, but before you knew it, we were in UPLAND, Indiana. We went from Ann Arbor, Michigan, a vibrant, colorful, and progressive university, and we left this behind. We left my house, my sandbox, my fort, my dad, and my normal. We went to a small Christian college in a conservative town, and my house became a small duplex. We didn't have a sandbox, and my dad wasn't there. This was our new normal. My trajectory had changed. We had to adopt a new normal. It was a new lifestyle, and it felt like we were the only divorced kids in UPLAND, Indiana. We did not fit in. We were not normal. This was a pivot point. It was a point imposed on me. I didn't make this change, and I'm sure many of you have had hardships that are similar. And it's not what we do with those things, it is what we do with those hardships that defines us. And while some people may have pushed back and railed against this, I accepted their normal, but I didn't fit in. So I developed a chip on my shoulder, and I pushed away authority, and I didn't have role models. This was not a good normal, but was the choice I had made. I started kindergarten shortly after we moved, and my brother was in 3rd grade, and he recently told me that his teacher asked him, who in the class is divorced? And he raised his hand, and he was the only one. He thought, I am not normal. Now, this is a great reminder that we have really powerful words, and they have really strong impressions on the kids around us. We have to really think about those things. A new idea is delicate. It can be killed by a sneer or a yawn. It can be stabbed to death by a quip, and worried to death by the frown of the right man's brow. And while Charles Brouwer was talking about ideas, I think this is why so many kids stop raising their hands as kindergartens on the way to high school. At 5, despite our circumstances, I had this crazy optimism that I was creative and I was going to use every ounce of my creativity to change the world. I was thinking about really big ideas like communism versus capitalism. And was the world created or was there an explosion? And what existed before that? I was rethinking things, taking things apart both literally and mentally. I wanted to understand the world around me. My theory is that when we were young, we actually grasped more our uniqueness, our calling. Yeah, we may have wanted to be firefighters and Olympians and garbage collectors, and maybe we've become none of those things. But in that, there was a clue about our uniqueness, the thing that makes us special, our talents and our abilities, the thing that we've been given to make the world a better place. No one else on this planet is like you. Your normal is different than their normal. Rethinking normal isn't necessarily easier, but it is more rewarding, more fulfilling for those around us as well as ourselves. Now, rethinking normal may not get you the 3-car garage and a slice of the American dream, but it does get you incredible freedom. Freedom from the pursuit of someone else's normal. Following the well-worn path starts to seem ridiculous. We travel roads together, but at times we're going through the forest all by ourselves with only our trusty compass. Speaking of Olympians, my son Will, he's 7. After the Winter Olympics, he told me he wanted to be a gold medal bobsledder. After the Summer Olympics, he wanted to be Usain Bolt, and he actually taped a track down our hallway so he could start to practice. Now, I don't know if he's going to be an Olympian. That's for him to decide. I'm there to listen, encourage, and challenge him. Will has an active imagination, and sometimes I like to ask him, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm imaginating." And while Webster doesn't actually let that be a definition, I think it's a great idea, and I've stolen it, and I use it often. Back to UPLAND. I was in middle school, and my mom bought me a 35mm camera. I went to Taylor, and I took some classes, and I became the first middle school photographer, and eventually in high school, I was in the journalism team. In high school, I wanted to be well-rounded. I was afraid to be myself. I was in the marching band, football, wrestling. I took Latin. Why? Well, because everybody takes Spanish. I started taking art classes. I had always doodled and drawn houses and trees and things in surf and ski magazines. The high school art teacher thought I was onto something, and he suggested I compete, and so I did. My mom took my drawing to the professor at the dean of the professor at the art department at Taylor. He thought maybe I was an art major, and so I became an art major. After a class or two, I realized this was not my normal. These people were really passionate about their craft. I was just using it to imaginate. I kept attending classes, but it didn't really show up. And not showing up is a recipe for disaster. Not having a worthwhile goal, a worthwhile purpose. Aimlessly drifting is dangerous. My freshman year, I met a special girl. Full of life and energy, and she loved horses, and so did I. I thought, this is destiny. We quickly fell in love, and before you knew it, we were headed off to camp for the summer. I went to wilderness camp, and she went to a Western camp. There was one phone at wilderness camp, and I had a message. The message said, "It's urgent. It's about family matters." I called, and it was confirmed. I was going to be a dad at 20. That's not normal. Every day I wrote to my girlfriend, and I begged her, I pleaded, I said, "We need to get married." And we visited a couple times that summer, and at the end she relented, and we got married before we went back to school. We found a new normal. Drifting was not going to work. I needed to get serious about rethinking my normal. The job market in Upland, Indiana, is not rich with opportunity. So we moved to Fort Wayne after my sophomore year, and I got a job and continued to go to Taylor, Fort Wayne. I did not manage all my hats very well, and I missed some critical details. For instance, I missed an entire year of Spanish. Dang it, for taking Latin. They let me do my commencement, but inside of my diploma was nothing. And I let my job define my normal, and I never finished it. Without a degree, I had to rethink normal. I had to become creative. My marriage did not survive, but I was blessed with 2 amazing boys. And while I was growing up and accepting ownership of my life, I still had a lot of rethinking to do. Being a single dad, I had more time to think and read. My mom had passed away amidst all this, and my dad had never really been present, so I needed role models. I knew I wanted to become a good dad. I wanted to be a present dad, but I didn't know what it really looked like. What did it mean to be a good dad, a good worker? It became clear I had a lot of rethinking to do, and I found great mentors in books, conferences, and cassettes. Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, John Maxwell, Seth Godin, Jim Collins. I became addicted to growth. I became addicted to rethinking normal. I wanted to own my own future. I wanted to become an entrepreneur. And I continued to seek out mentors, especially in leadership and business. I went on from rethinking occasionally to rethinking daily. I was told Ben Franklin said, "Consistency is the sign of a weak mind." And I've not been able to find that quote, but I think it is a brilliant concept. As new information comes in, of course we have to change our opinions. Of course we have to rethink normal. And when we start to change our futures, when we start to own it and start to rethink normal, it makes other people uncomfortable. They may have been perfectly content with their normal, and you're messing with it. We're bound to be misunderstood. Is it so bad, then, to be misunderstood? Pythagoras was misunderstood, and Socrates, and Jesus, and Luther, and Copernicus, and Galileo, and Newton, and every pure and wise spirit that ever took flesh. To be great is to be misunderstood. Rethinking normal has given me some amazing opportunities, both professionally as well as personally. Professionally, I was able to be on the ground floor of people adopting the internet. I became the president of a best practice network, and I started to help other businesses rethink their normal. It's what exposed me to TED, and is what led me to apply for the license in TEDx in 2010. When we started, people would say, "Who's TED?" TEDx is a major undertaking, and I want to thank Mark and the volunteers for doing that. Luckily, I'd found a group of mavericks who were willing to bring this first event to the city. And each year, we kept rethinking and challenging normal. TEDx actually started to open doors for other people. We were seeing connections being made in the community. I was offered board seats and new clients, and it led me to my dream job. We discovered lots of great speakers, and lots of great connections happened throughout the community. But in 2014, TED was becoming my full-time job. I needed to rethink my normal. I loved this identity, being the TEDx guy, but it wasn't who I was. I needed to keep rethinking normal. Rethinking normal led me to my beautiful bride, Sarah. She's the most amazing and supportive person I could ask for. Together, we are rethinking normal. This is my whole big tribe. Wave 1, Nick and Preston, and Wave 2, we call them the Crookies. In this shot, Catherine and Will are in their pajamas. Will burns hot like a furnace, so he hardly wears a shirt. And Lizzie, she has her coat on over her PJs because she's helping her brothers load up the van for the next leg of their cross-country trip. Wave 1, Nick and Preston, are definitely rethinking normal. They live in San Diego. And everyone says it's too expensive, especially the housing. Well, Preston took that and flipped it on its head. He took his spare room and his futon and turned it into an income property. and he continues to add new properties. In fact, I was talking to Preston the other day, and he said, "Dad, I'm retired." I said, "What, you're retired?" He says, "Yeah, I'm retired." He's like, "I don't have a job, and I get to travel all over the country. I'm retired." I said, "Well, I guess you are." I guess he's enjoying his new normal. Sarah and I have been married 15 years. She's my best friend. She's my rock. She's lovingly supporting me and letting me rethink normal. And she often says, "Hand in hand, let's do this." Wave 2 is rethinking normal as well. You should sit with us at the dinner table some night. It's never boring. Sarah and I were talking recently, and she says, "I think I know why our kids are so creative. We grew up watching TV, but with them, we play and we wrestle and we read books and we watch interesting videos. So they think about bigger concepts than we did. So I guess it allows them to imaginate and rethink their normal." So what's next? Well, in January, I left my job, my dream job, and I wanted to control my future. I wanted to be able to rethink my normal. And for a while, I told Sarah, let's just sell it all and buy a boat and sail around for a year. And I came up with a more tame version. I said, well, let's get an Airstream. By the way, figuring out what you want to take in your Airstream or your boat is extremely clarifying as to what's important to you. Well, what's next? Who knows? But I guarantee I'll be rethinking normal. Rethinking normal is a daily practice. It's an attitude of learning. Your practice will be different from mine. It should be. Side note, that's my wife, Sarah, there. That's Chris. Where's Chris? And that's Preston. This is 2013, and we're rethinking yoga at lunch. Yoga has become actually a part of my daily practice. I don't do public yoga, but it's the way I start my day. It's part of my daily practice. After yoga, I get quiet. For 5 minutes, I just sit in silence. Some people call it meditation or mindfulness, but I'm just establishing an uplink. I'm looking for direction, for clarity. Next, I send love, and I seek to understand those people who bother me. Why? Because it lets me let go of the past and strain towards the future. I list 11 things that I'm grateful for. Why 11? Why not? I spend time thinking about who I am. I clear out the mental junk. Because I am worthy, and so are you. Then I spend time thinking about what I want. And like an athlete, I like to visualize it. I like to see it with great detail. That's the most predictable part of my day. And then, throughout the day, I want to keep an attitude of learning. An attitude of learning is always thinking, what can I learn from this person? I believe everybody has something to teach us if we're curious and we're looking. Read, watch, listen, get around smart people like we are today and have great conversations. It's never too late to rethink normal, to find a new normal. You are the architect of your normal. You are unique, and you're on a unique path. And if you keep rethinking normal, you're going to live a more fulfilled and successful life and possibly change the world.